In this video, I'm going to be attempting to beat every level on Halo Reach without using any checkpoints and on legendary difficulty. I have three main rules for this challenge. One, I'm going to always have the Iron Skull turned on, which forces you to restart the mission if you die at any point. Secondly, I'm not going to be using any glitches or exploits, so no leaving the map, no skipping triggers to despawn enemies. I'm going to be trying and beat every level as it was intended. Finally, I'm not going to be turning on any helpful skulls at all. The only skull I'm allowing myself is the Iron Skull. Also, I'm going to have a link to a playlist of the VODs of each successful attempt in the description, so you can just see the full run without any editing in between. I started out Winter Contingency pretty confident. I hadn't played Halo Reach in a couple of years before doing this run, but I remember this level not being too hard. On my second attempt, I ended up beating the level. But then the video corrupted. Then on my next couple of attempts to try and beat the mission again, I just kept dying to grenades. To be honest though, this mission wasn't so hard. At the beginning of the mission, you have to walk through some buildings, then big reveal, the Covenant is on Reach! The first fight is easy because I could just headshot all the grunts and jackals with my pistol. Then I walked through a field where there are some elites, and I just killed them with the noob combo, which is when you take an enemy's shields out using the max charge of the plasma pistol, and then you just headshot them using any precision weapon. It works almost against every single elite. Then I drove past as many enemies as I could, until I got to a section where I had to hold out for an evac ship. At the evac ship firefight, I just shot all the grunts with my pistol, and then I went to the high ground above this bunker where I think the Marines were staying. And it was perfect because my teammates would distract most of the Covenant, and I could just shoot them while they were shooting my teammates instead of me. But that only worked for so long because one elite almost took my head off with his Needler rifle out of nowhere. Then I almost died again, so I started panicking and almost blew myself up with my own grenade. To make things even worse, I ran out of plasma pistol ammo, so I decided to pick up a gun I've probably never used before for some reason and started shooting the grunts instead of the elites that were shooting at me. Thankfully, my AI teammates are way better than me and they ended up killing the elites. The second part of the mission where I got dropped off in like this super intense firefight really wasn't that hard either because I could just hide in the building and shoot them, and whenever I got low I would just hide behind all my teammates that were in the building. And then the indoor section barely has any enemies. The only hard one is the sword elite, but I just noob comboed him when he ran at me, and then yeah, Winter Contingency was done after that.
Boo! You suck!
Yeah, so this mission was a bit harder for me. I couldn't just run in and hope for the best like the previous mission. I actually needed to come up with the strategy. During the first firefight, where I had to clear a path through Sword Base, I died a ton of times to elites, whether it was the one with the plasma caster blowing me up, or elites walking up to me while I was scoped in, literally meleeing me in the back, or just mowing me down. Sometimes the dropship that would drops off more elites would decide to hang out for extra time and it would kill me. I eventually came up with the strategy where I would always walk up the left side to the high ground for cover, and I would shoot as many grunts as jackals as I could with my DMR, so Cat, which is your AI teammate who is also invincible since she's a part of the story, would push up, and all the enemies would get distracted by her, and I could just noob combo them in the back. The next part of the mission was the section where I had to kill 2 wraiths using a target locator. I struggled a lot in this section because the wraiths in Reach for some reason are super good at predicting your movement, and even if you can't see them, they can see you and will just start sniping you. Every time I would scope in with the target locator, the other one would just blow me to smithereens. But then I realized by accident that if you don't go out too far, the hangar behind you or whatever won't close, and you can just hide in there and use it for cover while the target locator recharges, and after I learned that, I got past this section every single time. Then I had to decide which objective I wanted to drive to, and I ended up deciding that the communication outpost was the better one to go to because of the weapons I could get there that would help me with the anti-airgun outpost. On my way there, I wanted to drive by the Ghost, and that was just a really good idea. Lucky for me though, I could abuse Cat's invincibility again. I would just drive up close enough so that the ghost would see me and Cat in the Warthog. Then I would hop out so Cat would shoot at it with the Warthog turret. And as long as the ghost just focused her in the turret instead of blowing up the Warthog, she would just completely blow it up. The first time I did this, however, I decided to hide behind the Warthog. After that unfortunate turn of events, I decided that it was probably a smarter idea just to hide behind the rocks while Cat took care of business. Once I made it to the outpost, I had to actually kill all the enemies there and take it back from the Covenant. The first enemy I would tackle would always be the Revenant. This was either easy or very hard depending on if there were 2 elites in the Revenant or 1, which through all my testing seemed to be random. If there were 2 elites when I would try to hijack it, the other elite would just take over piloting it. I needed the Revenant so I could boost past the Ghost en route to the next section because, as I learned before, the Warthog cannot outrun the Ghost and will just blow up. So blowing up the Revenant with a rocket launcher wasn't an option because there is a rocket launcher there that I think you're meant to use to blow up the Revenant. To clear the outpost, I would go to the first building and kill the Jackals with needler rifles so they wouldn't snipe me, and I could just kill the leftover elites and grunts in the second building once they were cleared. When the dropship dropped off more Jackals and grunts, I headshot them all with the needler rifle that I got from killing the Jackals, and I also made sure to pick up a sniper rifle because that was very helpful in the anti-air gun section. The strategy I developed for the anti-air gun section was to use the sniper rifle to take out as many elites as I could, especially targeting the one that used the plasma launcher, and then just finishing off everybody else with the needler rifle. Before the dropship could drop off more Covenant, I would go to the top of the building so I would get a good vantage point. Then I used the DMR up there and extra sniper rifle ammo to kill everything. I needed to make sure one Ghost wasn't blown up though because I needed it to boost past all the enemies just like I did with the Revenant before. I tried to do it with the Gosshog they give you, but like the Warthog before, it did not go well. Before I left the outpost though, I did make sure to pick up the plasma launcher to use against the 2 hunters coming up. I made these 2 outposts sound easy, but they took me so many attempts to get down consistently so I would get a good run in. The next big obstacle I had to face in this stupidly long mission was killing the 2 hunters, which shouldn't be too hard, but the first time I actually made it there, I ran out of ammo and had to resort to using the AR. The next time I made it there, I actually remembered to use the plasma launcher that I had brought, but the auto-aim decided to hit the wall instead of the hunters, so that attempt didn't go well either. But on my next one, I did get past, and eventually I got it down consistently. You just need to aim it so that when it locks on, it does not hit the wall. The final section of the mission, I had to walk up a bunch of stairs while killing Covenant, was honestly the easiest part of this mission. I could just hide behind more invincible teammates since all of Noble was there basically, and I just slowly killed everything while they were distracted by my teammates. And then 5 minutes later, when I made it to the top, I got jump scared by a camo elite that I did not know was there, and died.
Greetings!
The second time I made it to that point, which is the final area of the mission, I had my rocket launch ready and I was so ready to kill this elite. Noble 6, on the other hand, was not ready. But finally, on my third attempt making it to the final section of the level, I just used the good old-fashioned noob combo and I killed all the elites easily. Should have done that from the start, but yeah, after that, the level was over and Sword Base was done. When I first started out playing this mission, I thought it was going to be a pain to beat, because on my first attempt, I got it sniped by an invisible elite that I couldn't even see.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
But on my second attempt, I realized that the Covenant sniper in Reach is a direct beam, so it was really easy to spot where he was shooting me from. From then on, most of the mission was just sniping the Covenant from so far that they couldn't even shoot me back. although there were a couple of places where I needed to hold out while enemies came in dropships, and I learned from these sections that dropships were more dangerous than the actual enemies they were dropping off. After learning this, I just decided to hide in the buildings while the dropships were dropping everything off, then I would come out and snipe everything once the dropships flew away. The second holdout section of the mission dropped me off 2 camo elites and 2 hunters. For some reason, the camo elites just stood still. I don't know if it's a glitch or they just don't have working legs, so I easily sniped them. And then June, which is another story character like Cat, distracted the hunters, so I shot them in the back. The rest of the mission was fighting a couple of enemies and some shade turrets while I pushed through the forest. And then we learned that there's more Covenant on Reach than we originally thought, and they brought some big guns. To be honest, there wasn't really much to say about this mission. It was probably the easiest mission in the whole game due to having so much sniper rifle ammo. To be honest, Tip of the Spear really made me reconsider doing this challenge. It was brutal! The mission starts out with what I would argue is one of the hardest sections in the game so far. Due to Cat's impeccable driving, me and her crash in front of a group of Covenant. This wouldn't be so bad, but there are 2 anti-air shade turrets that make this section very difficult. The projectiles these stupid turrets shoot, I believe are the same ones the hunters shoot, or at least very similar. I think these 2 turrets contributed to at least half of my deaths on this mission. Let me remind you, this is the very first encounter with enemies in this level. After I killed most of the enemies in the first section, a pelican dropped me off a warthog with this weird rocket launcher gun on the back or missile launcher or something. Then I was ordered to push ahead and take out some bigger anti-air guns. I just started thinking, do you know how many times I died to these small shades and now you want me to kill 2 big ones? Honestly though, the first anti-air gun wasn't very difficult. I barely died here at all, and this was before I figured out that you can just shoot the guns. I thought you had to go in and like blow up the core, but you could just shoot them from afar and they blow up. I did have one embarrassing death because I stood right next to the anti-air gun while it was blowing up. I don't know if I was AFK for a second, but I just kind of sat there and took it.
You stupid!
Once I blew up the first anti-air gun, I needed to wait for a pelican to drop a portable bridge for me so I could progress in the level. You really shouldn't die at this part. All you have to do is wait for the bridge to be dropped and then drive by the wraiths and ghosts. But since I was always impatient, I would just go right away, and I kept getting blown up by the wraiths and the ghosts. The next major section of the mission is a mining station that I had to clear out because the Covenant were using it as a base. At first I would just drive up, but I quickly realized that Noble 6 has a problem that I do not, which is being too tall. Even if I was crouching, Noble 6's whole head was still visible and I would just get melted because of all the cover being too low. What I ended up coming up with was started to be the main theme of the mission. Shoot scary stuff from far away on a vehicle. I just hopped in the back of the hog and shot the shade turret from far enough away that it just could not even see me. Once I crossed the bridge and I got up some stairs, there were only a couple jackals and grunts to deal with, but then I turned a corner and there was an elite on a plasma turret that I did not realize the first time I got there. Thankfully, for the first time in this mission, the grenade launcher they gave me at the beginning came in handy, and I didn't die to that elite on any other attempts because I could just bounce grenades around the corner. The last part of this section I had to kill an elite zealot, which wasn't that hard. Most of the time I could just noob combo him. Then I would make sure to pick up a plasma launcher, and that was the mining station done and dusted. Next I had to take out the second anti-air gun, which was probably the second hardest section in this level, right behind the beginning of course. I don't know if it's just me, but this section seemed pretty RNG. The first time I made it there I had one wraith to kill, but around my 5th time making it there I saw a second wraith randomly. Turns out there's meant to be 2 wraiths. I don't know what happened to the second wraith the first couple of times I made it there. My theory is probably they just drive off the map for some reason. There are also 2 hunters I had to kill, and at first I was actually fighting them up close, but then I realized I could just shoot the anti-air gun with the warthog gun that's on the Warthog that's like stuck on the bridge, and then kill everything else using a ghost that I got at the mining station. The next section of the mission is a part where I was flown in a Falcon with George to a recon spire, and all I had to do was shoot some shade turrets and Wraith, which sounds easier than it actually is because those melt you on Legendary. The final part of the mission was the spire, and it might have actually been the easiest part of the mission. I think I only died there twice, once to a grunt sneaking up on me while I was scoped in, and another time to the sword elite at the top, which is the final enemy of the mission. On my successful attempt, I took the route that Halo Completionist takes to get to the spire, and this time, instead of being scared of the sword elite, I just ran up to him and smacked him in the back. I did actually have another embarrassing death right before my second attempt, though. I thought Tip of the Spear was bad, but this was worse. This ended up being the hardest mission in all of Halo Reach. It didn't take me as many attempts as some other missions, but it still took me by far the longest amount of time to beat Deathless. At the beginning of this mission, me and the rest of Noble need to push through a beach to get to a secret launch base to get a ship, because according to Cat, that's the only way to take down the big Covenant ship that appeared at the end of the last mission. And the only way to take it down is to put a slip space drive in it and have it explode or something. This section was actually pretty easy because Noble does a good job of distracting all the enemies, so I could easily kill them all. The one bad thing about this part was the fact that I was forced to use the pistol and deal with its awful bloom, which made sniping the jackals and grunts from far away a huge pain. Once I got in the building, I would make sure to take a rocket launcher from one of the Marines because it comes in handy later in the mission. Right before you get to the longsword, there is one elite who is really easy to assassinate because he isn't looking at you. This space section is by far the hardest section in the whole game. I died so many times to the Seraphs just melting me.
Saber teams.
The enemies in the first section come in waves. The first wave is just Banshees, and I never died there. The Banshees die to about 3 shots from the longsword's machine gun, and they also fly in super predictable patterns and don't do much damage. The second wave consists of 4 Seraphs. These Seraphs have a shield I had to shoot through, and then when the shield breaks, I could hit them with missiles to blow them up. That doesn't sound too bad, right? The Seraphs kill you in about 6 shots, and their shields are extremely tanky, so when I would try to kill them, the other ones would turn around and destroy me. For the wave with 4 Seraphs, I found that the best strategy is to be super aggressive and take out 2 of them. Then I would hide behind cover and wait for my ship's health to regen. Then I would kill the other 2. Once the 4 Seraphs are dead, Anchor 9's defenses come back online, and the next wave spawns in. Now that the station's defenses were online, they could shoot, and I could just hide behind the station where almost no enemies go, and then wait for the station to kill the enemies. Eventually some phantoms spawn in, and to proceed to the next section I needed to kill them. Fortunately I could just shoot 2 barrages of missiles at them from so far away that nothing would shoot me, and that would take them out, since once they get in position they don't move. Once all the phantoms die, all the Banshees and Seraphs retreat, then I could dock at Anchor 9 so George could get out of the longsword and put the slip space drive in the Pelican. The second space section has a Covenant ship that I needed to land on, but of course it was surrounded by Seraphs that I needed to kill. I found that the best strategy was right when I spawned in, fly as fast as I could to the bottom of the ship because there are a bunch of Banshees there, and if I flew fast enough I could destroy most of them while they were still docked on the Covenant ship. Then I would fly around in circles under the Covenant ship and wait for the ships that I was with to kill all the Seraphs and leftover Banshees that I didn't kill. For some reason, if I stayed right below the Covenant ship, nothing would shoot me. I would peek out every once in a while to shoot missiles at stuff, but for the most part I would just let my teammates take care of them. Once I saw the Seraphs and Banshees were dead, I would fly out from under the Covenant ship because I needed to blow up the Covenant ship's thrusters to actually progress in the mission. And after I blew them up, then 5 more Seraphs would spawn in, and I would just go back to hiding while my teammates killed them. Once I was on the ship, 2 elites would fly up, but since I had Marines with me, they would just get distracted and I could kill them with the DMR. Once I dropped down, all I had to do was use my rocket launcher to kill the remaining elites in the first room. Then I could grab a plasma pistol and move on to the hangar. In the hangar, there's an engineer, which I would always try to kill first because he gives the elites and grunts a shield, which is super annoying. Then I would sit back and pick off the grunts, making sure to look out for one grunt that spawns with a fuel rod. I didn't realize there was a grunt with a fuel rod on my first attempt getting to this section, and he made quick work of me. There was also this really annoying elite with a focus rifle that just loved sniping my shields off me while I was trying to clear the room. After I cleared the hangar, George flew in with his Pelican and I needed to get to the bridge. The bridge had some camo elites, one of them having an energy sword. He was actually pretty easy to kill because most of my attempts he would just go for the Marines first and I could just noob combo him. The final fight in this mission I needed to do was defending the Pelican with George back in the hangar. The first few waves weren't that bad because it's just grunts, jackals, and a few elites. Also, George loves just standing in the middle of the room, so all the Covenant just focus him. The final wave is the hardest one. It has 4 elites, and they have plasma casters, a plasma launcher, and dual-wield plasma rifles. These 4 elites probably caused most of my deaths on the ship, but I did eventually kill them all, and the mission was over. I had never been so happy to see George throw me off the ship and die.
Tell him to make
Get the fuck out of here!
This mission took me about 6.5 hours to beat Deathless. Exodus ended up actually being one of my favorite missions in this challenge. I felt that the difficulty was just right, even though Halo Reach's brutes aren't that fun to fight, and the brutes are the main enemy in this mission. Sniping them, however, is very fun. In this mission, I had to reconnect with UNSC forces after George threw me out of the ship. The first section of this mission was a building that was just full of suicide grunts, and as long as I took it slow, I never died here. Once I made it outside of the building, I was introduced to the brutes for the first time. They don't have energy shields, so the noob combo doesn't work on them. What you have to do is shoot them a couple of times in the head to knock off their helmet, then you can headshot them for the kill. In the next building, there was a holdout section where I had to wait for an elevator with some civilians. This was the hardest part of the mission for me because there isn't much cover and you get rushed by 2 hammer brutes. After a couple of resets, I was able to get past it by using my sniper on the 2 hammer brutes and DMRing everything else. Next, I got introduced to the bullfrogs, which was a group of ODSTs with jetpacks. I used the jetpack there to get across the gap and made it to another building where I had to clear more brutes, jackals, and grunts. Unfortunately, the bullfrogs are not really good with the jetpack, to be honest, and they kept just jumping off. Once I made it to the top of the building, I had to kill a brute with a fuel rod and blow up some shade turrets. Then a falcon came to pick me up. This was another fly around in the falcon and shoot stuff section because I needed to escort a pelican with civilians. This falcon section was harder than the one in Tip of the Spear because of the banshees. Sometimes they would shoot me from where I just could not see them, or they would just banshee bomb me and I would instantly die. In the final section of the level, I needed to activate some anti-air guns to blow up a Covenant cruiser so a ship with more civilians could get away. I took this part pretty slow and just slowly killed everything from far away with my DMR. For the wraiths, I got in a Warthog and gave my passenger a fuel rod gun that I had picked up from the brute earlier in the mission, and he made quick work of the wraiths with the help of the Marine that was on the turret. Once everything was dead, I pressed some buttons and the mission ended. I don't know if I was getting better or the missions were getting easier, but I did not find New Alexandria that hard. Most of my deaths were just dying to random enemies because of not remembering the mission that well. In this mission, Kat had me going around turning off Covenant jammers that were intercepting all the signals to command. The mission had 3 main areas that I had to fly to in the Falcon. The order of the areas is completely random, which I kind of like. It made each time I played the mission feel a bit different and unique. One of the buildings I had to fly to was a penthouse. The penthouse was probably the easiest out of all the buildings. Before I entered the building, I just had to kill a couple of grunts, jackals, and brutes. Then I could ride an elevator up to where the jammer was. The first time I turned the jammer off, I did not realize it was a trap until Kat said it.
It's a trap!
I tried to kill all the drones ambushing me and then quickly died. My next attempt, the moment I turned off the jammer, I just sprinted back to the elevator and rode it down. Another one of the buildings I had to go to was a nightclub full of hunters. My first time going there, I tried to kill the hunters and I just ran out of ammo trying to kill them. I found that the best strategy was just to sprint past the hunters, turn off the jammer, and sprint away. Every time I did that, the Marines would tell me to go back to the Falcon because they had it under control, and I just took their word for it. The third building was a hospital. The first area of the building is a staircase going down with an engineer and some grunts and jackals. After I cleared them out, the next section has some brutes in it that I had to kill. This is the section that showed me that the needle rifle is the best gun to kill brutes with. 3 shots per mid and they super combine and the brutes explode. It's great. After the jammer gets turned off, elites spawn in with jetpacks. But for some reason they just let me shoot them from super far away with the DMR and they never shot me back, so they were easy to clear out. In between each jammer there are small side objectives I had to do in the Falcon, but none of them were very hard, so I didn't think they were worth mentioning. Once all the jammers are taken out though, Cat calls me to tell me to come back to their base. But oh no, the Covenant found out where she was talking from and now they had to evacuate it. I did die here once because I got swarmed by banshees, but on my successful attempt I just went very high up and none of the banshees bothered me. And that's the mission. This final fight's the last thing I had to do and then nothing interesting happened. Oh, except for Cat getting shot in the head.
What?
The package started out with a section with only grunts, which is kind of weird to have a section with the easiest enemies in the second to last mission. Then there's a really easy tank section where I had to kill a couple of ghosts and take out 2 big anti-air turrets. Since I now knew that you could just shoot the turrets from afar, this section was also easy. Once the turrets explode, some Falcons come in and they killed most of the enemies for me. Then I just shot some banshees down and blew up some turrets and revenants from far away. This tank section was the only section I died in. Once I made it to Sword Base, I didn't have to restart the run once. The reason we were back at Sword Base was because Colonel Holland wanted us to blow it up so the Covenant wouldn't get any of the info there. The Sword Base section was the easiest part of this mission, since I had 3 invincible Spartans with me that could just soak up all the damage. Once we made it to the end of Sword Base, we took an elevator down to a secret lab. The rest of the mission was just a holdout section. It seems intense because they throw so many enemies at you and there are wraiths and banshees, but since there was so much ammo I could just sit under this roof and none of the vehicles would ever get close enough to hit me. Some parts seemed intense, like when a bunch of elites spawned in with 2 hunters, but they never really pushed up, so I could just shoot them from behind cover. Once they did push up, they immediately targeted my invincible teammates and I just shot them all in the back. Finally, after holding out for like 20 minutes, Dr. Lady hands me Cortana and tells us to take her to the Pillar of Autumn. I was finally at the final mission. All I had to do was get Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn. Unfortunately, Carter's flying is subpar, so me and Emil had to jump out and walk the rest of the way there. The first section was a couple of enemies that I needed to kill, then I could get on a mongoose, but before I got on the mongoose, I always made sure to get a fully loaded DMR and some rockets from this really conveniently placed shack. Once I got on the road, scarabs would appear, but as long as I kept top speed and stayed on the road, they would never kill me. After jumping a bridge, I needed to ditch the mongoose, and this was the second hardest section of the mission, just because it had a wraith. Throughout my time playing this game, wraiths have been the bane of my existence. I don't know if it's just me, but Halo Reach wraiths are like precision snipers. Thanks to the rockets I picked up earlier, this wraith shouldn't have been such an issue, but this wraith was behind a ton of enemies, and every time I would try to kill it, jackals or brutes would rush me, or the wraith would just sidestep all of my shots. The best way I found to clear this section was to first kill the jackals in the sniper tower, then hug the cliffside and shoot rockets at the wraith, hoping enough would hit so that it would die. Once the wraith was dead, then I could kill all the brutes. Once I cleared this section, I moved on and oh no, there's a scarab!
Hey man, how's it going?
Time for a super intense scarab boss fight. Just kidding, here comes Carter, who I forgot was still here to be honest. After the cutscene, there's some drones and skirmishers, and then the section where the hit Halo Reach game mode, Invasion, takes place. For this part, most of the time I was juggling my guns, which means dropping a third gun and picking it back up quickly so I could carry more than 2 guns. First, I used the Spartan laser to kill as many enemies as I could, then I would drop down and kill everything else, making sure to save my needle rifle and rocket ammo. On the next platform, I Spartan lasered the shade turrets, then walked across the beam while still juggling guns. Next, there were some rooms to clear of enemies, then it was the next main obstacle, 2 hunters. They were the reason I needed the rocket ammo. After taking care of them with rockets and grenades and clearing some more rooms, it was time for the final area of the mission. This section of the mission is supposed to be a super intense hold off of difficult waves, but I just camped in a corner for the first half. Then I ran out of ammo, and then I almost died picking up a sniper rifle, but I clutched, got lucky, living on only 1 red. After all the waves are done, Captain Keys shows up, and I handed him Cortana, and this overrated character dies.
What is that?
Then starts the final part of the mission, where I had to go over to where Emil died and take over the gun. But there were a bunch of elite zealots in my way. Yeah, I just noob comboed them. Then I used a hologram to distract all the phantoms and banshees, and shot a ship in its gut. And yeah, that's how I beat each mission in Halo Reach on Legendary without using any checkpoints.